Welcome, everybody. Happy 4th of July. This is the Pipeline Podcast, and we are coming at you with just a weekly update. What we're going to be covering is a bunch of side stories that aren't really popular enough for us to cover as a full episode. So let me show you here what we're going to go over. It's a New York Post article, but it has this graphic that's really cute. And basically it's just talking about what I'll be talking about this episode. Trump's had a pretty good 2 weeks, whether you like him or not. And I'm going to explain to you why. And so we're not going to go over all of these topics here, all of these stories. Some of them we have already covered, and some of them just aren't really worth talking about. But then there's a couple things that should maybe be on here that aren't. So we're going to go over this graphic and talk about the stuff that really matters. First, we have the US v. Iran. We've covered that on the channel before, so we're just going to kind of skip it. But you all know about this. Trump strikes the nuclear facilities in Iran, allegedly, as far as everyone can tell so far, took them out of commission. Whether you like that or not, the Trump's administration sees that as a win. The American military and probably most people in the government see that as a win. So that was the first thing to happen. Next, we have the June 23rd Supreme Court ruling. There's a couple Supreme Court rulings here that we're going to go over, but this is the first one, the June 23rd ruling. If you're not familiar with it, I'll just kind of give you a little summary. They made a significant ruling on the 23rd related to immigration and the ability of the Trump administration to deport migrants to countries not their own so-called third countries. Specifically, the court in a 6-3 decision paused a lower court injunction that had restricted this practice. So that's another thing we're going to get to, that lower court injunction, in a little bit. That's a different Supreme Court ruling that kind of goes over this a little bit as well. But this June 23rd ruling basically says that, yeah, maybe you didn't come from El Salvador, but you can get deported there. That's what this ruling is. So a big win for Trump. Makes his whole deportation campaign promise that he's trying to fulfill, it makes that a little bit easier for him now. Maybe a lot easier. Next on the list, we have June 25th. NATO leaders agree to Trump's demand that they commit to spending 5% of GDP on defense. So I have just the NATO article here talking about that. This article here is just talking about it. They're going to do the 5% defense investment commitment. So basically they haven't done 5% yet, but you just got to think about it. The EU does things a little bit slower, but they've agreed that they're going to get up to 5%. Some of the countries in the EU already are at the 5%, but not all of them. So it looks like by 2035, because again, these kind of things go slow. It looks like by 2035, all the countries in the EU will be at that 5%. So it is technically a win for Trump's administration, but I feel like Trump looks at this and says, are you kidding me? You can't do 5% right now. But either way, worth covering. After that, we have the June 27th Supreme Court ruling. It ruled that lower courts cannot issue blanket national injunctions against Trump's executive orders, which I kind of agree with, but we'll go into it a little bit. And I do have a great source on it here. So it's a video from New York Times that we're going to watch, and it kind of talks about the ruling a little bit. It's only going to take a minute, and then we'll go over it.
The Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch.
Americans are finally getting what they voted for. No longer will we have rogue judges striking down President Trump's policies across the entire nation. No longer. The judges have tried to seize the executive branch's power, and they cannot do that.
So yeah, basically what happened is the Supreme Court kind of ruled that hey, a lower court doesn't have as much power as an executive order, a presidential action. It doesn't mean that courts can't strike down things that Trump does. The Supreme Court would still be able to do that, but it just can't be they call it there. Pam Bondi calls it in the video. She calls it just can't be rogue judges. So that's kind of what's going on here. And we've seen that a lot. I don't really have any examples pulled up, but we've seen it where Trump does something and like some judge in like a random county says like, hey, you deported that guy, but you have to bring him back. It's like stuff like that. It's really weird stuff where you've never really seen that stuff before, where it's just like a random court telling like the president that they can and can't do stuff. Kind of makes sense to me that maybe a higher court would have to go to a higher court before the courts would have enough power to kind of stop the presidential authority. But either way, it doesn't really matter what you think about it because the Trump administration sees this as a win. It's a big win. Next up, we have June 29th. Canada scraps a digital service tax against U.S. internet giants under pressure from Trump. We're not going to go over that. This doesn't really matter here. Something that might matter more was like RFK's interview with Tucker Carlson, where he says that he's going to do like a double-blind study into like vaccines and kind of get some real information. Like if that actually works out to be like a real legitimate study, you know, like you could put that in this graphic here. That could be something that would actually be great. This is just talking about the University of Pennsylvania transgender swimmer. Under pressure from Trump, the University of Pennsylvania strips the titles of the transgender swimmer. So that's like a big issue. Like, can trans, like male to female, compete in like female sports? Because they do have some advantages. And Trump kind of campaigned on like being against that kind of stuff. So they put it here. Big thing in the graphic here. Takes up a lot, to be honest. Another thing on July 1st. Oh, so Trump sued 60 Minutes a while ago. So that lawsuit's finally over. Paramount agrees to pay $16 million to Trump's future presidential library to settle a case over the editing of a Kamala Harris interview by 60 Minutes during the election. So I kind of looked into this a little bit, but I haven't seen the interview. But he basically claimed that like they cut Kamala's interview to make her responses look better. And he must have had a good case here because CBS settled out of court. We're just doing a little update on it. Like we're kind of talking about that the lawsuit is finished. They settled out of court. That's why it's in here as like a big win. But we're not really going to go into that whole lawsuit. Maybe we will in the future. I don't really think it's that important. So I'm not going to give you an opinion on is the lawsuit legitimate or did CBS just settle out of court just to kind of, they didn't want to have to deal with the lawsuit and the pressure from Trump? Or did Trump actually have a real lawsuit? I'm not going to tell you that. You're going to have to look into that yourself. But usually if you're innocent, you don't settle out of court. It kind of does like show an admission of guilt. Maybe at one point I'll watch the interview and kind of give you a better opinion in the future. July 22nd, new data shows the Border Patrol arrested just over 6,000 people for illegally crossing the southern border in June, a new record low. So yeah, it's just, this one's just saying that like less people are crossing the border, like another campaign promise type thing. But I feel like everyone already knows that. Now it's not a good time to be hopping the border illegally here. Now it's not a good time to come into the country illegally. Yeah, that's just an obvious one for me. July 2nd, Trump announces trade deal with Vietnam. Super cool, could turn into something. Trump was saying some kind of stupid stuff like, oh, man, I think Vietnam would like buy some of our SUVs. Man, if Vietnamese people had American SUVs, like that would be really cool. And it's like, who in Vietnam is gonna fucking buy an SUV, drive on those roads in the jungle in like a huge like tanky car? Like no one's gonna buy those there. The infrastructure is not made for it. But other than that, though, there is good stuff in the trade deal. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. It's just Vietnam. Their economy is not like the largest. July 3rd, final passage of the Big Beautiful Bill. So yeah, Trump's Big Beautiful Bill got passed. It's big, but it's not beautiful. Check out our episode coming up Wednesday. I believe we're going to go through the bill. So I do have it up here if you want to take a look at it yourself, if you want to read it. It's just here. And what we're going to be doing for our Wednesday episode is we're going to go through this top to bottom, read it, give our opinions, give our takes. So if you're too lazy to read it yourself and you do want like a comprehensive guide on this bill, you don't want like a bias to it, come here. We're just going to go through the whole bill. And you can even watch. You can do it with us. We're going to do it live on Twitch. If we miss something, point it out. If we get to something and you have a good hot take on it, like that would be great. We want to really, really digest the whole bill. And we're going to spend some time doing it. And the last thing we have is July 3rd. A positive job report shows that unemployment is down 4.1%. So that's just like a good thing for the economy. And Trump's the president, so he gets the credit for that. So that's really all the updates we have. Again, these were all just like smaller updates put into one. There's no like huge, like crazy news story here today, other than it's just the 4th of July and the big beautiful bill is like finished. It all went through. And then this is kind of just what else happened in the last 2 weeks that we haven't covered on the channel. So I wanted to just fill everybody in and kind of just say that like, doesn't really matter what you think. The Trump's administration says, yeah, this was a good 2 fucking weeks. Like, nice fucking job. Let's keep going. And if they keep going at the rate they are, I mean, the shit that they are getting done, all these things here are kind of like the baseline to like finish out Trump's term here, to keep doing like what he wants to be doing and to be kind of not jumping through as many hoops, especially with these Supreme Court rulings. It makes him fulfill his campaign promises, what he did campaign off and won off of. It makes him fulfill those easier. It's important to understand that. Either way, have a good night. I know this was kind of a Trumpy episode. These are all the things that we really haven't covered on the channel that are important and you need to know about. So if you checked it out, you're welcome, and have a great night.